Would you like to play some football?
And welcome to Gridiron, the Gospel of Faith in College Football podcast. I'm George Schroeder, joined by Todd Unzicker and Dean Insera. And it's more than a week now since the final game of the regular season. And we're all sort of going into withdrawals and actually thinking about the NFL and that kind of thing that you have to do because there's still some football to be played there. But there are two seasons. There's the college football season and waiting for college football season. And that's what we're in. But before we get there, we've got a lot of things to talk about tonight. And so the first thing that we really need to get to is we haven't had a chance to download with Dean or let Dean unpack what it was like to be in Hard Rock Stadium when Indiana beat Miami. And obviously, unfortunately, that means beat your guys, beat your Canes, Dean. But how was that experience?
Well, we're
Great
still recovering
seats.
from the loss. The blocked punt when they're in punt safe and a defensive lineman comes through, not some gunner, a D lineman. I think I'm still thinking about that in my sleep at night. But it was great. My boys and I, we got to go to 3 of the 4 playoff games for Miami, starting in College Station. And it was just a really neat experience to just go through the run. What an incredible run. So that's what makes the playoffs just so unique now is, you want to be so disappointed you lost a national championship. But in the process, you play Texas A&M, you play Ohio State and Ole Miss and beat all 3. It's just so unique now. You win 2 bowl games, Fiesta Bowl, Cotton Bowl. I don't claim they're actually those bowl games anymore, but it was just really neat. But for Miami game, there's just so many moments. I know this is part of football, but there were just so many things you can look at and go, if this just would have happened here, if this just would have happened there, missing a field goal, of course, the block punt, and Beck's interception at the end. I don't even think about that much. There's so many other things that could have happened during that game that I didn't understand the game plan the first half. It drives me crazy when people try to play offensive coordinator. So I'm not trying to do that. So I'm not going to critique it. I'm just going to say I didn't understand it. I just didn't really get it, what he was trying to do. I thought Fletcher could have kept cooking and there'd be like 6 straight downs or we'd throw. It was just, I just didn't understand what he was trying to do. And, but for Miami to be there, we're at the 11th row, 35-yard line. And from me, like just how close that is, 11 rows is like right by the field, obviously. Right in front of us on the field was Tom Brady, Marco Rubio, Jake Paul, the fighter, every ESPN personality, every Miami legend from Bernie Kosar to Ed Reed and everybody in between. It was just awesome, man, just to be a part of that atmosphere and be there. It's the closest thing it feels like. I know, Todd, you've been to a national game. Of course, you have, George, all your work in the past. But it's the closest thing college football has to a Super Bowl feel, I would imagine.
Right. That's right.
Not just I don't mean a big rivalry game where it's like we got 80,000 people here ready to beat Alabama. Like I don't mean that kind of thing. I mean like just the hype of it.
It was an event. You talk about that
right.
in South Florida. It's an event.
The electricity of it all. It was just like it was the place to be. It was wild. But the Trump was there, and I think Dana White, UFC's sitting next to him, and it was wild. It was really neat to be part
and
of.
From a football, from a standpoint, hopefully enough times passed you can do this. What's your take on Indiana? What'd you see? What did they do different? What was surprised you? What's your takeaway of this national championship team?
Yeah, so I think Mendoza is such a special kind of gamer. The word intangibles to me is not a cliche, overused word when it comes to a quarterback. If you have those, and he has those, I'm still trying to figure him out as a number 1 pick or an NFL quarterback. I'm still trying to figure it out. I still don't fully, I'm not there yet. But in terms of just a college absolute gamer, just the little things he does, like on the 4th and 5, and our defensive coordinator said that he signaled in something. They saw it coming, or when they had the quarterback keeper and it was too late, and our middle linebacker didn't move over, and he winds up scoring on a 12-yard run on 4th and 5. I couldn't even believe they even went for it in that moment, let alone doing that. And that's another thing that surprised me. Cignetti kind of comes across like he would coach conservatively, just kind of like hard-nosed guy, no nonsense guy, but like he's going for it on 4th down, and then and their ability to make plays. Like some of their big plays were just like back shoulder throws down the sidelines. Their wide receiver would make the play. I was impressed by that. And as I said in our preview, what worried me as a Miami fan was that where Miami is strong, they were also strong. So where Miami is good up front, Indiana's good up front. I thought we moved them around, but I was impressed. 16-0, 16-0. Yeah, obviously. And I do think they were the best team in the country. And I honestly really do believe Miami was second. I think we saw the 2 best teams play in the national game.
I actually think we did too. And that was a question I actually have for you. By the way, when I think of Signetti, he definitely, obviously, he has a father who was a coach, and he has a heritage of coaching, but he does remind you a lot of Saban in some things. One of the
And that,
things that I think about Saban is is think back to the first time they played Clemson in the national title game, and Deshaun Watson is giving them fits, and he stole a possession with an onside kick in that game that really turned the tide and allowed them to sort of stay a little bit away, kind of get some distance from Clemson. Or Clemson might have won it, potentially would have won it that year instead of the next year when they had the fantastic finish for their first title. And so people never gave Saban a lot of credit for the riverboat gambler part of it. And I'm not even sure he would like that characterization, because he would probably tell you that analytically it made a ton of sense. And so Signetti's probably the same way, but they have guts and a knack for making the call at the right time, I think, to go with all the processy things that we hear about.
Yeah, it was one of my takeaways. One of my takeaways to this season was what happened to punting. We talked about that a couple
It's
episodes.
analytics, right?
Yeah, I think it was the Oregon game, the second playoff game. It was 6 times that Dan Lanning went for it on fourth down, maybe 8. I'm sure one of our listeners will correct me, but you're seeing that a lot. And I think what you're touching on, George, is accurate. Nick Saban, he recently talked about he used to believe in playing defense and control the ball. And he said he realized in the latter half of his Alabama tenure that he needed to just simply go score points. And so then you look at a Dan Lanning, look at Kirby Smart on onside kicks he did at crucial moments this season. I think that's what we're starting to see now is the number of teams going for it. That I will always remember is that 4th and 5 when they called timeouts. You thought they were going to kick it. He ran the kicking team out and then brought it. It came out. One of the other media outlets, I can't verify this, although I want to, is that Signetti writes the word aggression on his arm with a pen before the games to remind himself to be aggressive. And I heard that shortly, right before the national championship game, and I thought about that in that moment when he went 4th and 5. I think everybody talks about the process and the system or whatever that is. I think what you're seeing in the coaching ranks now is working the process or the system isn't the old system that most of us grew up with. It is whatever that system is that you stick to it and you go for it. And I think that's what we see in Signetti.
It's still moment by moment, when your assignment, and win it in practice on Tuesday, each rep, and win it in Wednesday, and do all the little things, and then win each moment in the game. Only do your job. It's still all of that, but it's so clearly a much more aggressive play calling style, and I think players respond to that too. I think players like that. I got nothing against Kirk Ferentz, but I'm not a fan of how he'll play. He's like the epitome of still playing field position football and punting, and it's worked for Iowa wins 10 games virtually every year.
Yeah.
But there's a ceiling.
4, I'd say.
And maybe Iowa just has a ceiling, and maybe he's exceeding their ceiling because he plays that way. But what I'm saying is Nick made that change. You're seeing it with Signetti. You see it with Kirby. You see it with the younger coaches like Dan Lanning. And yet they're basing their whole programs in a process type thing, but then they're much more aggressive in games, I guess. Is that where we are?
Yeah. Well, Miami, it was in the teens. Indiana's total yards in the third quarter. I want to say it was either 13 or 16 yards Miami held them to. So you could feel the momentum shifting, and then that just couldn't finish it off. That block punt will haunt me, man.
No question. I think if the punt doesn't get blocked, I think Miami wins it.
Yeah, and and on the play, the possession before what got Miami the ball down there inside the 5 was Tony received. Tony caught the punt, and if you look at the above aerial view replay, Miami had a fake setup where he was going to throw back across the field, and it was wide open. That'd have been awesome. Like, when do you see that kind of stuff in a national championship game? It would have been awesome.
I love that. I like what you said, and I don't know if it was you, Todd, or you, Dean. I do think Miami was probably the second best team in the whole tournament. And that is what it is. It's a tournament, which is hard to understand, right? It's not just a playoff, it's a tournament. And I don't mean that in a 10 seed, which is what Miami is, can get hot and get going, although that clearly can happen. But you've still got to have the requisite parts to win all these games in a row against really good teams. So here's what I think. And I understand why you're the 10 seed. And I know that 8 weeks ago, we were like, are they even going to get in and all that kind of thing? I think they were vastly underseeded. Is that the word I want? It's not overseeded, underrated. And I think it's mostly because of, to go back to one of our old hobby horses, because of the mid-season start of the college football playoff rankings that don't matter. And so they started at a time when, and then we were always thinking about them versus Notre Dame, but they started at a time when they just had a couple of bad games and not looked very good.
Against not bad teams. People act like Miami lost to Murray State or something. No offense to our racer friends. But yeah, that's so. It was a special year, and the fun thing for Miami fans, and I saw a great meme today that said Miami's the bad guy again. You know what it's all is right in the world. You know, so Miami's the bad guy again. But it was just, I think Miami's here to stay. I mean, because Mario knows how to build a roster. He knows how to do the portal. He also can recruit high school. They clearly develop people as well. I mean, some of Miami's best players: Mark Fletcher, Malachi Toney, Ruben Bain, Maya Goa, the offensive tackle, who might be the first tackle taken in the draft. Those are all high school signees Miami had that they developed themselves. Wesley Basaint, starting middle linebacker. Fitzgerald, who had the interception against Texas A&M. You know, so I think you're going to see. I think Miami's here to stay, and that's just not fan talk, and that's what I really think. So I would say they're preseason number one based on signing Mensa from Duke. I think Miami should be preseason number one for next year.
Well, so that's one of our thoughts to tackle, right? So, Todd, do you have any? Listen, I wouldn't have a problem with that. Let me put it this way. I know that some of the usual suspects are going to be what people think about. Some people are going to go, well, now it's Texas's turn. And let me just tell you this. I am gun shy on doing that with Texas because of what they did this year. Do I think Arch Manning's going to be better? Do I think they've clearly gone out in the portal and got better pieces around him? No question. But I'm not doing that with Texas. I've heard too much Texas is back through the years. And then they didn't have a bad year, but they clearly didn't have the year that they were expecting and people were expecting. I think Miami makes a lot of sense. I think Oregon's going to be really good again. You know, with Dante Moore running it back, that's a big deal for them. But they lose some key pieces.
I think Georgia will be strong.
There's no question.
I think it's do or die for DeBoer. I think they have to be better. Of course, the rankings are they're gonna rank Tennessee high in the top 25. You know, their biggest win last year was Mississippi State.
Yeah, but they're not. Nobody's looking at them as like they're number one. I mean, and frankly, no one's going to be looking at Alabama as a preseason number one.
But the difference is those count as ranked wins come playoff time.
Sure,
when you beat Tennessee because they're preseason ranked, whose biggest win was Mississippi State this year. People still get enthralled by tradition and big stadiums, you know, and get behind the logo and think that, you know, the Tennessee is a big win, but Illinois stinks.
People, I do think some of that's changing. And Todd and I talked about this last week. In an off season of Feinbaum calls will change it back because that's just how this works, right? But I do think that at least in the immediate aftermath of the fact that Indiana is the third consecutive Big Ten team, 3 different programs, it's very SEC-like, right, to have 3 different programs win 3 national titles in a row from the Big Ten. And then just it's fairly clear that the Big Ten, first of all, is better than people gave it credit for. Not to say they don't have some rum-dums, they do, but it's better than people give it credit for. And certainly at the top, their top teams have been better than the SEC's top teams over the last couple of years. And we can talk about all the reasons that is, but that's pretty clear. And I don't know when we'll get to the point whether any of us will all agree that the mid-level teams are better. And I don't know that that's the case, but I do think you have to start thinking maybe Illinois is better than we thought they were. One way you're going to figure that out, that it's going to be that way, is, you know, the Big Ten's been playing 9 conference games for a long time. The SEC, when they start playing 9 conference games, that means half the league takes another loss, right? Which is what everybody's known for a long time. And that doesn't mean they're not good, but what it means is their record won't be built against another non-conference opponent. And so it won't be that all 16 teams get a win. 8 of them are going to take a loss, and that changes some of the rankings at some point, I think. I don't know if that makes
Yeah.
sense or not.
We just have no rankings. Sorry.
Well, and here we are looking at preseason. Who's your preseason number one, Todd?
Dean likes to have a ranking of Miami at number one, and he doesn't care about the rankings after that.
That's right.
After that, why would we have a ranking? Who would you have at number one, Todd?
I'm going to follow with Dean. I think that Miami, Cristobal, I said this for the last 3 weeks in a row. Cristobal has proven to me that he knows how to build a program. Miami has the history. It seems to be whatever resources that were lacking for a while is there now. And I think he has a good staff around him. I still think he went out and got the offensive coordinator. He got the defensive coordinator. Needs to have somebody maybe shore up the special teams now after what's haunting Dean for the last 2 weeks. But Mario Cristobal is proven that he is here. And I think with what hanging on to Malachi Toney was huge, picking up Mensa, I think the Canes, they're my number one. I think Texas is going to be good. I'm with you, George, in that I'm sick of the we're back. Nobody hates the we're back more than I do from a few years ago, but I think Texas returns a lot. Cam Coleman is back and Bo Maskew is back. They picked up a bunch of guys in the portal. He kind of has that feel, Arch, kind of his final year, final run. I didn't think Arch played bad this season, and I think he's going to get better. And
I do too.
No, he just
I'm
crippled
buying.
by the expectations, right? They were so out of control that,
Buying.
people are
Arch in
going to put
Texas.
Notre Dame up there because they return a lot. I think they should be disqualified for sitting out of the bowl game, and I'll get back to another one of my favorites in this year. But
Texas Tech on there because I think they're going to breeze through the Big 12 with Sorsby at quarterback, and I think they're going to be strong.
Yep, Georgia is returned. Georgia was the second youngest team and returned the least amount of production in the SEC to start this season. They overachieved all year, and I think most of that roster is back. And
yeah, they're going to be good.
They're going to be good. What is the 9-game schedule in the SEC? That's going to be interesting now. But I think
Lane
Kiffin, LSU. We're not talking about that. Lane is going out and being the portal king. He is pulling
portal king,
some
right?
Guys.
And there's one program where we haven't mentioned that I'm kind of surprised we haven't mentioned. Ohio State. They're going to. Yeah. Julian Sayin had a really good year for first year starter. He's coming back. They're going to bring back a bunch of guys too, and they're always going to have talent. And so it is a lot of the usual suspects. You know what? A better question than who's number one or who should be number one. And I think Miami makes all the sense in the world. We need to talk about how they got Darian Mensah here in a minute, real quick. A better question than maybe who's number one is who's the next Indiana? Maybe it's Texas Tech, right? Maybe it is Texas Tech because they've sort of have a similar, they've had more success in their career, right? Nothing's going to top the Indiana story. They've had more success in their program history than Indiana. But who's the next sort of not one of those usual suspects that pops up?
Virginia Tech?
SMU.
They could do it. I have a lot of respect for Rhett Lashley.
Franklin's going to win immediately at Virginia Tech. He'll win immediately.
No question. It's a different
you're
setup.
Seeing that. You're seeing that in Happy Valley. You're seeing them bringing over the Iowa State squad. You're seeing Virginia Tech going heavy on the portal, but it's players that James Franklin knows. I mean, this was one of my notes coming in was I think I made a living in covering recruiting and what we've all known for the last 40 years. I think what Cignetti has done is upset how you build a championship club. What you did for 30, 40 years was get the best players, period. How many 4 and 5 stars could you have? And if you did that, you were in that top 5 to 10 with that, you had a legit shot at winning a national title. He wins a national title 16-0 with 0 5 stars, 0 4 stars. He grabbed a whole bunch of players that either played together or played against each other that he knew from his JMU days. And he assembled a bunch of guys that really believed in that team and that process. I think that's what James Franklin is going to be able to do that pretty quickly, I think, in Blacksburg.
Also, Mateer being back at Oklahoma. This is not the Indiana category, but who can be a contender? That's interesting to me. And they're a big brand, obviously. And then what's the latest on Trinidad and Ole Miss?
Nothing as of this podcast. Nothing. There's no resolution. They seem cautiously optimistic that they're going to get him back. So,
and also if Bryce Underwood can take a next step and see what Kyle Whittingham can do at Michigan, I'm interested in that as well.
Yep,
I'm too. One of the things you're right about you're right about what Signetti did. He also worked the portal really well. First of all, he brought over guys from James Madison, right? 2 years ago. So when people look at like Matt Campbell at Penn State and they go, he's bringing a bunch of Iowa State guys over. How are they going to compete in the Big Ten? You know why? Because he knows what he's doing and he's got good players there. So if you can take JMU players and win a national title, and that, make no mistake, a bunch of those guys are JMU players, then
23 of
if
them.
you get the right, yeah, you can do that. But what's interesting is that's how Signetti's work in the portal. They're going to get some highly sought after guys in the portal, and now they have proof of concept to get them. But he's still kind of going after the guys that he thinks fit his system, and then he's still sort of developing them. And that's different than what we're seeing Lane Kiffin do. I'm not saying Lane Kiffin is like they just got the best quarterback out of the portal based on the rankings, Sam Levitt from Arizona State. They got the best offensive lineman. They got the number 2, this guy, and the number 1 edge rusher, and all these kinds of things. And so they're just collecting the talent and spending the money. And it may work tremendously, but it's not the same thing as what is way Signetti did it. And I don't think it's the way Signetti's going to do it from here out either. I also don't think Indiana's going away, by the way.
No.
Well,
No,
so
they're not going away.
they may not,
They're not going away,
catch
but they
lightning in a
hit the
bottle.
jackpot. They hit the jackpot in picking up a Heisman Trophy winner in the portal.
No, there's no question.
Yeah, they're not going 16-0. Yeah.
You know, he
No,
had
that's
23 from JMU and 11 from ODU, which JMU played. So he's watching film on them every week. So he kind of knows what they are. He's going to lose that from being now at Indiana 2 years, and he's going to lose that. So that'll be interesting. But they're not. I don't see them going back to 3 wins, 4 wins. They're going to be here to stay. He's got a system as long as he wants, and I'm a
think that's
firm
right.
believer in what he's done.
64 years old, so however long he wants to go, I'm in his corner. I think he's.
Yeah, well, two things with Indiana. I think they'll never be back to old Indiana for a long time. They're going to be 9 wins, 10 wins, go to a decent bowl is going to be like their worst season. Playoff bubble. I think they'll be around there. And second, now because they've won and tasted that and care about football, I think it means when Signetti retires, he's not a spring chicken, that he's got a lot left in the tank, but they're going to still take football seriously. And they're actually going to spend money based on his contracts, proving that, and go get a good coach.
Well,
that's why
they're far more attractive to a coach. I mean, they went and got Signetti not because they wouldn't have wanted to go get, Kirby's top assistant, but because they couldn't get Kirby's top assistant. You know what I mean? That's
at the time.
They weren't going to get the Dan Lanning.
Yeah.
They weren't going to get Pete Golding. They weren't going to get whoever, right? And so that's why they took a chance on a guy who was in his 60s and had never been a head coach above the, James Madison was just moving to FBS, so they'll be able to go out and get different people now. And I also wonder, you mentioned this, but what does it mean to activate a fan base that's never been really activated before? Because it was a basketball school and now they're activated for football. How does that say? And by the way, you also activated a billionaire, at least for the moment, in Mark Cuban. That doesn't hurt. Maybe he'll do his Cody Campbell imitation, the Texas Tech booster, and help fuel a run for all we know. All right. Let's do this. Couple things in the offseason related to the portal that we got to get to. One of them is we've mentioned his name a couple times, but Duke quarterback Darian Mensah is no longer Duke's quarterback. He's going to be Miami's quarterback after the school sued him, and then they settled. And so there's a lot of people around college football that are mad that they settled with him because they sort of said, well, anybody can leave and contracts don't mean anything. He had signed a 2-year deal with them in December of 2024 when he came in from where? Tulane, right? Tulane. And signed a 2-year deal with them. He was their guy, and Miami went after him and basically is paying a lot of money and apparently the buyout too. At least that's what they were going to try to do. I don't know what the terms of the settlement are, but is that the sign of what does that mean in the larger sense of things? Dean, if you can take the Miami piece out of it.
Yeah.
What does that mean in the larger sense of things?
I mean, there's a Miami piece to this. I mean, I think, Yeah, no one's yelling about what Sam Levitt got paid and the offensive tackle from Colorado who was asking for $4 million, who's going to
Yeah, Jordan
LSU.
Seaton, right? Yeah.
Yeah, no one's talking about that, and that's back to why I love it. Miami's the bad guys again,
No, but it's
The
it's it's
the
about it's
contract.
about kind of the breaking a contract piece of it.
Yeah,
It's
the
not
contract,
about
but
yeah,
any contract can be broken with a buyout. I mean, that's how coaches. That's how Lane Kiffin left Ole Miss, right? I mean, like it can happen anywhere. So I just think you're seeing again. I'm not saying I like it, but I think you're seeing the game become professional, and they have agents now, and so Miami didn't tamper, and Lane Kiffin didn't tamper, and they go through the agents. So people just call it tampering when they don't like the guys left. But you look at like Miami's backup quarterback, Emory Williams. He announced that he was going in the portal, and 5 seconds later, he was committed to East Carolina. And 2 weeks beforehand, everybody said, "Oh, he's going to East Carolina." Like it was known. Why? Because East Carolina contacted his people. Like, and it's just how it
well,
works.
sometimes, I mean, but sometimes it actually is tampering. And I'm not charging Miami with tampering. I'm just saying there is
But like,
clearly rampant tampering going on there. And there was before this system,
sure, like
before the
Alabama
way it is
called
now.
Tyler Van Dyke when he was at Miami, but I just think that the way it works now, I think it's just the new reality, and you want to exist in the world as it is. So the contracts are only going to get bigger. The portal's only going to get worse, until something changes and happens. I don't see
Right.
anything.
Well, they're going to
happening.
have to be able to hold people to some things. And I don't know how
Yeah,
and the only way
well,
you can do that,
buyout.
you notice what happens is in the NFL is you don't actually break contracts.
Yeah,
Quarterback
sure.
goes when his contract is up or he resigns, but you don't break contracts in the NFL. And they can handle that because it's a self-contained unit, collective bargaining, and each of the franchises is similar in a lot of ways in how they go about their business, and they have all agreed to do this stuff. Can't do that here. Here's the thing about Mensa. Right before the portal closed, he announced his intention to go into the portal. So here's what happened. He made it to where Duke couldn't be looking for a quarterback. Now, that wasn't his intent necessarily. I'm not saying that about him, but that's what he did to them. So they couldn't go look for a quarterback because the portal's closed. They couldn't be looking themselves. That's a problem too. So look, I think it would have been highly.
I think we're missing like the real big piece here. First of all, I don't fault Miami. They're going after the best quarterback they can get. Mensa,
under the system as it is.
I don't
Right.
fault Mensa. I don't fault players getting played. Players getting paid. There is a fundamental flaw in this, in that the schools don't want to call these guys employees. So the contracts can
That's
be
exactly right.
bought out whenever they want.
Yeah.
And
That's
until there's some legislation, basically what we're going to have to say is, hey, federal government, we need you to come in here and set something up, which, I'm showing some of my other cards, my other life.
Right. And
that
that's
scares
not going to
me
happen.
when we get to that point. But until then, what I do think you're going to see is eventually, I know this is our next segment, but the Dabo tirade a little bit. I don't know. I can't call it tampering anymore because there are no rules. I mean, the NCAA
That's
is
what I mean.
powerless.
Yeah.
And so now it is the Wild West out there. And I think the question for me is almost like a housing bubble. That's the best analogy I think I've used on the show before. These is going to keep going up and keep going up, and it's a grab bag for the money now. And then now, at what point will fans become disillusioned? I made a living off following recruiting. I've followed recruiting since I could get those magazines back. I'm showing my age. I don't even follow it now. I don't even follow it now because I'm like, what's the point in me investing in these players? Recruiting is still important, but it's never been less important.
But at some point, it's got to come back around, Todd.
Ratings are up. People like it's going to ruin college football. Ratings are up.
Now the games on Saturday or whatever day they play these playoff games, those games are still great. It's you can't root for players anymore.
I miss that. I do miss following the guy when he comes in, being pumped about the new freshman class. And finally,
watching your guys develop.
Probably going to start. He's a junior. We're pumped, kind of thing. And I remember Bobby Bowden did that forever. Grew up in Tallahassee. It was always 2 years between quarterbacks. So you had a junior starter every year. It was like Casey Weldon. It was Danny Cannell, Charlie Ward, Thad Busby, and you knew that those guys were going to they were going to be backups. And they were going to play in the fourth quarter, and then they're going to be the guy. And they were number one, top rated quarterback coming out of high school, and you were psyched about getting them. And I remember when Florida State had this is again landline days, pre-internet. They had a daily update. You could call in on the recording of what Travis Minor in Baton Rouge, he wound up going to Florida State, about what he was going to do. So you would actually call, and I would call and listen. That's done now. I can't see any scenario where that's a thing now. Granted,
But see, I hear about this on the ratings. And that's true. I'm not arguing that. I am telling you though that this system is unsustainable as
Agreed.
this keeps going, because you're already seeing reports, athletic departments having a hard time keeping up.
That's right.
And-
And some of them are going to be the big boy athletic departments, because not all of the big boy traditional powers have the same size
On-hand
donor
cash.
base, wealth donor base, or how often, even the wealthiest, how much are they going to want to do this year after year after year, this amount of money? And none of it is putting your name on a building. It's you feeding a quarterback for 4 months. That's what you're doing. And do it again next year. Do it again next year. Do it again next year. Not
the
everybody
other part
is a
coaches.
billionaire from Texas Tech.
Coaches,
Say that again?
Yeah. I think this is going to wear out coaches. You're not just recruiting every year. That was already a bear on coaches. All of us know coaches and have personal relationships with them. That's the toughest part. They're now going to recruit their own team and all of this every year.
Every day.
I mean, I really think the current course we're on is not sustainable. There will have to be some change to this at some point.
Every returning player announces they're returning now.
Right.
Like a freshman,
Yeah.
like
Let's
like,
run
you
it
know,
back. Right.
West
Yeah.
Virginia resigns freshmen, whatever. You know,
It's
like,
so
run it
crazy.
back.
Hey, speaking of, you mentioned Miami developed. One of the neat things about that is that Miami developed several of those guys from high school. And I really do love that. And we're going to see that some, not as much as what we've just been talking about. One of the interesting things, though, is that I find it's pretty cool is, so Dante Ward sat a year behind Bo Nix. He transferred to Oregon from UCLA. Dante Moore, I said Dante Ward for some reason, sat a year behind Bo Nix and then became the starter this year. And now, of course, he's coming back to be the starter again second year. And they brought in Dylan Raiola from Nebraska, who is a highly touted quarterback who, went to the Huskers, big deal. We'll see what he becomes, but he's going to take the same tack. He's going to sit. And so that's kind of interesting. Now, on the one hand, here's what else it means. It means Oregon, and you can thank Phil Knight for this, has the money to pay some quarterback who could go get some amount of money and start somewhere, or stay at Nebraska and own the state and keep starting. They've got the money to pay not only a starter a bunch of money, but also a backup a bunch of money. But I do find it interesting that there's, in the new world, you've got some places that are developing a new way of having a backup quarterback who is in the system and he's the understudy and is growing. Where some places there's not going to be any backup quarterbacks anywhere who are any good.
No, this is, look at right in your own town, Dean, Florida State. Let's be honest. Florida State could not afford to fire their coach.
Oh yeah.
They just didn't have the money to fire.
100% what happened.
And
I mean, even like their beat writers and they're in the know guys after the Stanford loss were like, he's done, he's gone. He'll be fired by Monday morning. And he's still here.
And just since our last recording, the NCAA broke a historic precedent in saying that schools can now sell patches on the players' uniforms for advertising dollars.
Right.
That's what we're going to see.
Don't do it. Stay strong, Notre Dame. Leave it alone.
See it. And
it's going to happen.
Why are we seeing Rutgers announce an $80 million loss this year? Rutgers, a state major flagship university. This is very quickly going to devolve, and I think it'll be something. We'll see what the straw that breaks the camel's back in this, and maybe that's the lead into our next segment, because one coach is already going off on a tirade. Yeah.
So scorched earth went. Dabo Swinney went scorched earth on Ole Miss and Ole Miss's new head coach, Pete Golding, by name, in a detailed and lengthy press conference about a linebacker, Luke Farrelly, that had jumped into the portal and gone to Clemson, enrolled at Clemson, going to classes.
Team meetings.
Right. Team meetings, and was actually in classes and things like that. And then Clemson charges was tampered with by Ole Miss, and specifically and directly by Pete Golding, who, as Dabo said, texted the player during his 8 a.m. class and says, "I know you've signed." what's your buyout? And then also texted him a photo of a $1 million contract. Now, that's allegations. I don't have any reason to disbelieve it. And nobody's pushing back against those allegations either, by the way. And it's so astonishing you hear coaches talk about tampering all the time. You hear coaches complaining about it, but nobody ever says out loud even the name of the school. And then it becomes apparent when the player goes somewhere, right? Oh, it was that school, but the coaches won't go there, much less the name of the other head coach, much less just go through it blow by blow, day after day. Here's how this went down, and Ole Miss and Pete Golding are to blame. This is really a big bad deal. That was Clemson's deal. It's astonishing to hear a coach go score starts like that. There's a couple things interesting about that. One of them is this: tampering is actually one of the few places the NCAA still has jurisdiction. Whereas like the contracts and stuff like that, that's been outsourced to the CSC, the College Sports Commission. But tampering is not what we used to call a major infraction. Now it's not a level 1 infraction; it's a level 2 infraction. It's not a major. It's what we used to call a minor or secondary, which is kind of interesting. And so, if you were to get tagged, if the NCAA, and they are investigating, they say, if they were to go, okay, all of this is true, what's the punishment? I don't know. Maybe Pete Golding has to sit out a year, not a year, but a game or something. But that would be about it. There's no real teeth to the whole thing. But what were y'all's reaction to hearing Dabo go nuts on this?
2 words: sour grapes.
That's spoken like a guy who just got Mensa from Duke.
Well, it's almost, I almost feel the fall of Dabo in front of us. Like he just seems to be unraveling on the field, off season, coaching staff, brings back Chad Morris. I mean, really?
Yeah, but at least they're using the portal. I mean, at least he was trying to play the game, right?
Yes,
a year ago, he wouldn't even do the portal, right?
He brought in the Purdue defensive end. Yeah, he's just a little mad, Todd. He's a little mad.
He is. There's some of that. We all would be. You get a guy in your. That's the part. That's the part. The coach in me was like, man, you bring a guy in and you get him in a team meeting room and you start showing him your playbook, and 4 days later he's gone. I mean, that's wild. I can't imagine what that's like for these coaches right now. And spare me, they make so much money. Who cares? If you have a job that you love, you want to do the best you can.
Hey, that's irrelevant. Money's irrelevant. How much money
stuff like this is just ridiculous.
I mean, think if Todd stole your student pastor right after he got there.
Yes, right. Exactly. I have 2 words for you: missed opportunity. We have to use the word alleged, but we could get rid of the alleged. If I had been part of his comms team, I would have said, okay, coach, we're going to take this up a notch. You're going to go out and do this. We're going to print off all of these text messages and things you're reading, and we're going to hand these out to the press corps here. Could you imagine what social media would have done with that? And, somebody said he was showing receipts. I'm like, no, he wasn't showing receipts. Show receipts is he would print those things off and show them to everybody.
That's
so I
right.
thought it was a missed opportunity. If you're going to go scorched earth, don't let people say alleged, just show it and say it. So that made me a little bit. I think the other thing is people are also missing. There was the tirade with Pete Golding and everything, but he had some pretty strong suggestions to fix things, some of which I'm kind of with. Limiting transfers to one time unless your head coach leaves. I think that would bring back what Dean says is, missing your core. I think some of the purity of college football was you kind of knew who your team was coming through. It still gives that freedom to players where they can transfer if they want to. He had a whole deal of moving the transfer portal window and changing spring ball to OTAs. And then he even did a 180 and said, let's do collective bargaining and make them employees. I also was not shocked that an ACC coach says we need to look at revenue sharing better because, once again, the implosion of the ACC, they didn't have revenue sharing. Miami got all of the purse for the national, all 20 million for the national title, did not have to share it with their conference.
But that's thanks to Florida State and Clemson.
Thank you, Florida State and Clemson, for the attorney fees and all the hard work.
Yes.
We're thankful in Miami.
And then my favorite part of it all is they got $3 million in travel budget and they didn't have to go anywhere.
Love it. Cocaine.
So
Mario, Mafia Mario.
That's how they pay Mensa.
I see an implosion of Dabo. I also see a little bit of what I do. I actually think a lot of fans resonated with what he was saying. I get a sense that people are going to miss their college football. Um, and maybe that's me. I certainly feel that myself, but I will be shocked to see, and this is where I was going with one other favorite from the year. Look at why the meaningless bowl games, the too many bowl games, those ratings were off the charts higher the last 2 years. In fact, I pulled this. There were only 4 bowl games that did not have higher viewership than the NBA finals and the NHL finals. And
We love
you know,
football.
We
we
do,
love
and we love
football,
college football, right? I mean, the
and we love
NFL is far and away, but after that, it's college football.
right. And I think the bowls are starting to figure out making novelties out of it. Pop-Tarts is the greatest example. They're marketing that well, but there are some other ones that yeah, have fun, make it an event, make it something players want to be a part of and that fans want to be a part of. Dean, what you got to do, I am envious of. I am envious of being able to go through a playoff. The reality is, as the prices have to go up because the cost of doing business is going up, I think it's going to price out the average fan, much
Oh yeah.
like the Super Bowl has been priced out of the average fan.
We like to joke with our Florida State friends. It's a lot cheaper to be an FSU fan right now than it is to be a Miami fan. So
That's right.
Definitely.
Hey, one more thing. If you want to know if Clemson's over this or not, if y'all haven't done this, and I'm talking to our listeners, but you two too, if you go to the Clemson football site, clemsontigers.com, and you look for Luke Farelli, everybody's got sort of their individual bio page on all these websites under the roster. It has a Luke Farelli page with his picture, and by the way, he's in a cow colored tie, right? So they had not had a chance to get his picture. He's in California. That was his former school tie and sports coat. But it says, click here for Luke Farelli's timeline at Clemson. And if you click on it, it says full bio. It gives the timeline that Dabo outlined.
I love it. I love how petty it is. I love it.
And it clicks to the video of the press conference of Dabo outlining their allegations. So those guys, it's so petty. And that's part of the stuff that makes college football so crazy and fun too. It's just the pettiness of it. It's not necessarily good. It's just entertaining sometimes. So, all right. Favorite, we promised this, I think, but we got to get into this because we're going to run out of time. But 2025 season is over, sadly. We got a long way, 200 days, some odd days before the first college football kickoff. And soon it's going to be the darkest days of winter because there won't be any football at all. What were your favorite moment or moments of the 25 season? It can be anything. It can be something, the best game you saw. It could be the best moment you shared, whatever. I've got a thought. Todd, do you have one that pops to mind?
I thought what I call the resurgence of bowl games. I thought that week between Christmas and New Year's was phenomenal. I had a lot more, this is anecdotal, but I had a lot more friends texting during that week of, are you watching this game? Are you seeing what's going on here? That will be a favorite of mine, is the playoff, which is exciting. I loved every second of it. I watched every game. I enjoyed the excitement of the tournament, but I long for the rivalry and pageantry of college football. And I thought the bowl games were a huge ton of fun, highlighted by the Pop-Tarts Bowl, but I thought there were many others that were really a lot of fun, a lot of good games that were out there. And so bring back the BCS and long live the Bulls.
Oh, boy.
I don't see that happening.
So for just like my Miami fandom, I have a separate category before I do my real one. It was the Keontae Scott pick 6 against Ohio State. That was just unbelievable. That was pandemonium. And so I'm more thinking about like things I'll remember from this season for a while. A couple is the Penn State debacle of them just being so bad that was
sure.
I didn't enjoy it, but like another one is, will Nebraska ever get it together? Like another year, Matt Rule was like, okay, are they going to finally kind of turn the corner here? Expecting that. Definitely Indiana, when no one would give them credit. Everyone was like, oh, they play a bad schedule and they this and that, flash in the pan. And like no one that lives south of the Mason-Dixon line would acknowledge they were good. If them to go 16-0 and whip Alabama, so Indiana-Alabama game might be up there for me. The things I enjoyed a lot for me personally. I've always wanted to go to
Indiana-Miami game less so for you,
I don't know
right?
that. I don't remember that game. But I am a lifelong watcher of MACtion, MAC Tuesday, Wednesday night games. I always said I was going to go, and I got to go on a Tuesday night to Western Michigan, Buffalo, and Kalamazoo, and then I got to go to Central Michigan, Ohio U on a Wednesday night, and it was just great. I went by myself in the freezing cold and loved every minute of it. That was a lot of fun. And then another thing I'll remember is the Arch Manning hysteria going that never really became. But
I felt bad for him. Okay?
I think he's gonna be fine. I think he's gonna be better next year.
Yeah, I do too.
So those are some just kind of moments. There are just some storylines, I guess, that I really kind of remember from the season, and will remember for in the off season is those things.
No, I think that's good. I love that, and everybody has different thoughts.
Mine was the Lane Kiffin saga, of course, and then more, and then more at Michigan.
Yes, we've forgotten about Sharon Moore at Michigan.
Yeah, no, go ahead, George. Sorry. Yeah, those things.
No, that's okay. What went down there and just the impact of that. Well, how about this? And then Kyle Whittingham sort of steps away from Utah because they're sort of kind of half nudging him, which is crazy. And he makes a point, I'm not going into retirement, but he didn't obviously have Michigan on his radar, but they wanted to elevate Morgan Scalley, right, who was a coach in waiting. And so then all of a sudden when the Michigan implosion happens, you've got Kyle Whittingham available for a stabilizing force. And that, I'm not sure they could have found a better guy in a traditional coaching search. So, that's a good thought too. I mean, there's so many things we could talk about. I'll pick one. And we talked about this on one of the podcasts a while back, or maybe a couple, but one of the things that I didn't get to do when I was covering the sport was go do what you did with your boys and your family, and you've done it for years, but you got to make the playoff run this year and that kind of thing. I didn't get to do that because I didn't have a team, but I also didn't have the ability to take my sons to games. So the last few years, I've been able to take our youngest to games. We'll go to Baylor games and things like that. Those are fun, even though Baylor was terrible this year. That's another story. But this year, because our older son, George, spent some of his formative years in Eugene, he became a Ducks fan. He's a crazy Ducks fan. And he listens to the podcast, Hey George, and so he won't mind me saying he's a crazy Duck fan.
Uniforms are unacceptable, that you change them every week. Carry on.
That's right. He loves that, right? He's one of those guys. He's the the new breed.
I want the Bill Musgrave, yellow helmet, green shirt, yellow pants. Sorry, carry on.
That's okay. So we planned a trip, and he's in the Air Force now, graduated a couple of years, well, not quite 2 years ago. He's an Air Force officer. We met in Dallas at DFW, flew to Eugene, and watched them play USC. And of course, way back before I was at USA Today, I was the sports columnist in Eugene. That's why we lived there. And so we got lots of friends there. And so we had kind of a dad-son trip together. And as it turned out, that game became a big game, and game day was there for the second time that year, which meant, much to my chagrin, because I've done the game day thing in Eugene on the coverage end of things back in the day before I ever went to USA Today. It meant that I had to get up at whatever time, dark 30 in the morning, dark 30, because it starts on the West Coast before dawn, and it was really cold. And so I actually had long johns on under my jeans, and I was bundled up like crazy. And some friends of mine from ESPN hooked us up, and so we kind of got to stand in some, good, kind of a little behind the scenes place. And I watched my son have a tremendous time. He actually had signs that he knew how to go get himself on TV. And so he was getting texted by all his buddies as he was putting signs up and stuff like that, just having a great time. And then I watched him have an interaction with, of all people, Pat McAfee, that made me think different things of Pat McAfee than I thought, just the way Pat reacted and related to George, our son. But then we got to go to the game together, and it was a great game. We had a great time, and just being able to do the fathers and sons thing is like, I don't know, it's like it's healing to my soul in some ways, right? Just because I didn't get to do that. And you don't realize what you're missing, even though you sort of recognize that you can't do it until you get to do it. And so it was so much fun. And so I'm going to remember our trip to Eugene. I hadn't been to Eugene. We went in the summer, but I hadn't really been to Eugene for a football game in 7 or 8 or 9 years. And going with him and going as a fan, or at least attaching myself to him as a Rabbit fan, and just having a great time, hanging out with some friends. They gave us
Some
a couple of
sons.
their season tickets. We hung out with them the whole time,
Great
tailgated,
stuff.
did all the things. I'm going to remember that, and kind of feel like I need to figure out a way to do that with him every year I can.
Yeah, do it, man.
Yeah,
Father
you
and
So,
should.
sons. Yep.
well, they're playing at Oklahoma State, I think in week 2, and so that's an easy
Great
one.
place to go to
We'll
a
go
game.
do that.
I
Yeah.
loved I went to Bedlam one year. It was awesome.
So, but that was it. I mean, so that's my favorite moment, and it's not necessarily anybody else's. Nobody else really even thought about the USC Oregon game, right? But it was a great moment for me personally. So many great moments as it relates to college football season. But we could keep talking about this. Let me say this: we're gonna shut this down and come back in the second half, talk about our faith in Christ. But we're not going to be doing as many shows in the off season. But Todd and Dean and I have talked. We're going to do slightly less frequency, but we're not going to like disappear for 8 months, even though football does. There's stuff to talk about, and we're going to do that. And so you guys, if you're watching us, if you pay attention to your social media, watch your
Like and subscribe.
podcast.
Like and subscribe right
Yeah,
now.
like it. Hey, like and subscribe if you haven't, and it'll come into your podcast inbox, and that'll be a good way to do it. And obviously, we're on YouTube too, so you can just search for Gridiron and the Gospel, and you can subscribe there too. And when there's a new video, it'll pop up. So, but we're going to continue to bring college football talk with Gridiron and the Gospel throughout the off season. So let's go ahead
Yeah,
and
we
take a
got
break.
we got season previews. Oh yeah, we got
Oh yeah,
NFL
yeah.
draft. It's about
Plenty
college
coming up.
football.
Once
Yep.
and listen, and as long as time as it seems, it won't be that long before we'll get back around to July, and it'll be talking season, and then it'll be people going to preseason camp, and we might actually know who somebody's roster is. It'll be a lot of fun. We'll just see. Soon we'll be doing a not quite so way too early number one and that kind of thing. So stay tuned for that. But we'll be back regularly, just not with that weekly frequency that you find during the season. So, all right, we'll be right back right after this. All right, we're back. Gridiron and the Gospel of Faith in College Football podcast. This is the second half, faith, where we talk about our shared faith in Jesus. Listen, that is why we do this podcast, is because we want to be able to tell people about the one who first loved us, who saved us, and we hope he's your savior, and we hope if he's not, he'll become your savior. But one of the things that we like to do from time to time is just talk about what God's put on our heart. And Dean, I know that, and by the way, so George Schroeder, Todd Unzicker, Dean and Sarah here. Dean, you've got something on your heart.
Yeah, one thing about being football fans is we are very irrational people. No one plays a tough schedule. Every team is overrated. Like if you lose, you're overrated. You didn't just rather than maybe I lost to a really good team at the last second. It's like you stink. They were a fraud. All the things.
Well, the whole overrated chant doesn't help you.
Yeah, but it's like every team's a fraud, and and it's just fun. And again, we're fans. It's harmless. It's fun. It creates good debate. It's fun for friends. But when it comes to our really interactions in the real world, football's a good bubble for us as fans. The scriptures are really clear about the call to be sober-minded. 1 Peter 5, be sober-minded, be watchful. 1 Peter 1:13, preparing your minds for action, be sober-minded.
Right.
1 Thessalonians 5, so then let us not sleep as others do, let us keep awake and be sober. And the way our world is right now, you just watch the news, and what we're seeing is a lack of sober-mindedness, from all kinds of people. And the people of God, people who claim faith, we're not going to be sober-minded about college football. We're going to think every team's a fraud. No one plays a good schedule, and every other team would go 0-12 in the SEC and all the things. But
naturally,
can never tell where you're coming from on the SEC.
But when it comes to go Illinois beating Tennessee, by the way, still funny, and Iowa beating the great Vanderbilt Commodores, who are the second coming of the Buffalo
So
Bills.
this is the example of not
Yeah.
being sober
Yeah,
minded.
so the football fans were not. But
That's how
those
you know
I'm
the
saying
SEC is the best. That's how you know it's the best, is because everybody loves it when it's down.
That and the ratings, but
been down for a while. So I don't remember the last time they were.
don't confuse passion with performance. That's what
Yeah.
happens sometimes too.
So I think the current players were like in middle school last time the SEC was in the national championship game. But
Not
but-
Indiana's.
Indiana.
Or Carson Beck.
I think that people are going to win the day as salt and light in this world as we're seeing it right now with all the turmoil around us. Are Christians who are able to be sober minded and call balls and strikes, not freak out, not overreact, not be quick, not so quick to speak to everything. Until you let, and I just think that it's a very biblical virtue that is let's go the underrated. It's underrated, in terms of it's the Indiana football of the scriptures. It's an underrated but very important winning way is to be sober minded, and that's kind of my call to myself and to all of us is to model that.
Yeah, amen, Dean. I feel that burden a lot. I have the angst and the joy of traffic in the morning with my kids on the way to school. I'm sure a lot of our listeners can relate to that. One thing we've got a habit of doing is whatever the day, today's the 28th that we're recording this. And so we listen to Proverbs 28, and I just say to the kids, like, hey, pick out one thing that you think, one bit of truth for wisdom for the day that we could apply to our hearts. I know I'm a pastor, I'm a professional Christian, but I'm not like doing in-depth Bible studies with my kids on the way to school. But one thing, and maybe that one thing is when we watch a world that is increasingly divided and hyper and overreactionary, it's not a reactionary culture, it's an overreactionary culture, is
Right.
that we can cling to the words of scripture. And I think a great starting place for me will be the 29th, will be to listen with my kids. And yeah, we're going to talk sports talk because that's what we do as a family, but we're going to get in the car. We're going to listen to wisdom and see what God would have in store for us, that we would use wisdom and we would cling to it because it tells us that it is better than all the riches and gold.
Well said.
No, listen, and let me just say this. You're not being a professional Christian. Obviously, all three of us are pastors, but I got to be honest with you. The whole idea of listening to the psalm or the proverb, in this case, of the day with your kids on a commute, I'm just saying, if I'm a listener, I'm a pastor, and I'm like, I can do that. We take our youngest 30 minutes one way. Why am I not doing that? But to get God's word into them any way you can. But it's also getting God's word into you, because it takes you back to Dean and let's be sober-minded and self-controlled. Well, how are we going to do that? It's going to be recognizing God's in control of this thing. He's got this game rigged for himself. And we learn to know him in his word. However you got to get it into you, but get it into your kids too, man. I mean, I would just say this, take advantage of that. Just it's almost like Todd unintentionally gave us a pro tip. This would be a great way to spend time with your kids, but also to get God's word into yourself. Take your own advice, right? And don't just say, take one thing away, kids. I'm going to take one thing away today too. I'm just saying, as you do that, the stuff that you take away from Proverbs 29 or whatever isn't necessarily going to apply directly to whatever the crazy outrage of the day is, but it might. More often than not, you'll be surprised. But what it's going to do is you're going to become more cognizant of who God is, and that he and the gospel are what matters. And you're going to probably find yourself being more sober-minded, more self-controlled as you get deeper in with him. And then you're teaching your kids how to do it too. I love that. But I'm glad, Dean, you're right. We not only don't see a lot of being sober-minded, we don't see a lot of self-control. We also don't see a lot of, quite frankly, even from Christians, the fruit of the Spirit a lot of the time. Just the general, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness. We get these tribal sides going, and we seem almost as crazed and sometimes more crazed than the folks who don't claim Christ.
Yeah. And by grace, Paul said, I work harder, right? So I see people who commit to the work of developing those virtues.
So, well, that's a good word. I appreciate you guys. And, one I'm actually going to try that with our youngest, Christopher. There's all sorts of Bible apps you can do it with. I use the Dwell app.
That's great.
I'm gonna
do British accents.
Yeah, that's right.
Makes
It's
it
not it's not the same as Waze where you can do Cookie Monster, right?
Ooh,
But I don't really want to do Cookie Monster with the Bible. So
I'm open to it.
City Church going to have a new program coming out soon. I know how that's going to work. So, all right. Well, hey, guys, I appreciate y'all. We'll come back and we'll be back here, regularly in the off season. But we just knew we needed to wrap things up a little bit, and we need to really talk to Dean about Miami and what it was like to be at the national title game.
Incredible.
And so that was fun too.
We'll be back.
If you guys want to talk about football with us or Jesus, you can email us at gridirongospelpod@gmail.com, or you can reach out on Twitter at George Schroeder, at Todd Unzicker, and at Dean and Sarah. Just our first and last names jammed together. That's what our Twitter handles or our X handles are. And we would love for you to do that. And again, please rate and review, hit the like button on the podcast, subscribe. That way you'll know when the next one drops. And find us online at gridironthegospel.com and at YouTube. Search for it, right? And subscribe there too, Gridiron and the Gospel. We'd love to have you guys be subscribers, and we definitely want to hear from you. We'd love your feedback. We'd love to talk with you about anything you want to talk about. And just stay tuned because there will be more Gridiron and the Gospel, a faith in college football podcast.